So if you're a video editor in Premiere Pro, then knowing what a hardware acceleration is and how does it utilize your hardware on your computer is, I think, one of the most important things to know. Probably the second most important. First of all, you need to know how to use the program and how to edit. But secondly, knowing how GPU actually helps you play back your codec and which codecs and what does hardware acceleration mean is absolutely essential, and is something that I wish I knew a bit before. But if you didn't know what it is, then in this video you're gonna find out. Pond5 is a one-stop shop for all the creatives looking for royalty-free media assets to use for your project. Pond5 has the world's largest collection of video assets, as well as other premium quality stock media to help you tell your story. In addition to video, you can find music, sound effects, After Effects templates, 3D models, or photos. Also, if you're interested in free stock media, go check out pond5.com/free. If you like what you see, sign up for Pond5. Once it's yours to use forever with royalty-free worldwide distribution. Pond5 features 24/7 customer service and best price guarantee to give you the peace of mind. Don't forget to use the link below to get 25% off. Go check out Pond5 in the video description below. So then there is hardware acceleration and then there is software encoding. Well, hardware decoding and encoding and software decoding and encoding. So if it's not hardware like GPU, what is the other option? Well, the other option is software encoding, which actually still uses the hardware of your computer, but it uses the CPU. But if you want hardware acceleration, that is the GPU. Maybe you've scored like one of the latest, 3000 series NVIDIA graphics cards, and that are absolutely amazing for video editing. If you don't know which graphics card is good for video editing, check out this video and you'll know then. But having a good graphics card in your video editing PC has never been more important, because Premiere Pro has done some updates, which means that now the graphics card can play back the footage as well. Previously, it used to be that only Intel processors had the Intel QuickSync and only Intel was able to play back and accelerate some of the footage, but now the graphics cards can do it. Both AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards. I recommend NVIDIA because they're so much better than AMD graphics cards. So first of all, let's have a look, like, where can you even turn it on? So if you go to your project settings, if you open up your Premiere Pro, like File, and then you go down to Project Settings and then General, then you can see that on the video rendering and playback, you have like renderer, and there's few options over there. Mercury Playback Engine GPU Acceleration, which is CUDA, and then OpenCL, and then Mercury Playback Engine Software only. Now, if this is selected, then only your CPU will be utilized and not your GPU. But what I recommend is you go for CUDA over here. If you're running NVIDIA graphics card, make sure that this is on CUDA, not OpenCL. And when you're running AMD graphics card, then make sure this is Metal or OpenCL. Just have a look which one actually works better, but I think Metal is going to be better. Now the same thing is when you're exporting, some of the codecs can be accelerated through hardware acceleration. So for example, let's have a look. If we export this random timeline over here to YouTube 2160p, then as you can see in the encoding settings, when I scroll down on the video tab, there is hardware encoding, which means that GPU is going to start putting the video together as well as the CPU, which is very good. So then, which codecs can be accelerated through the GPU? Well, our friends at Puget Systems have actually released this absolutely amazing little chart where they did the test, and this makes it very easy to understand. Now, your footage, it doesn't matter what resolution this is. This is nothing to do with the hardware acceleration playback. What it has to do with is the bit depth and the chroma subsampling. So you've probably heard of bit depth like 8 and 10 and 12 and 16, 14 bit depth of video. Then these are some of the playbacks over here. Also, mainly there's two codecs when using video playback. Obviously there is RAW, so if you're using Blackmagic camera like this one over here, the B-RAW coming from there, or Red RAW, or some other RAW codecs, then that is a bit different, and usually like the cinema camera RAW footage plays back a little bit easier than like your mirrorless camera footage, because if you take this Blackmagic Pocket 6K footage 6K, then that plays back so much easier than even 1080p from my Sony a7S III camera, because it's just a different way of putting video together, and usually raw footage is a little bit easier to play back than very compressed video footage, which means that your computer has to do a lot of work to like uncompress it and then play it back. Then there is H.264 and H.265, as well known as HEVC, codec, which basically means high efficiency video codec. And these are like the two main codecs that video playback. So if you're using any of the mirrorless cameras and even some of the cinema cameras, then they put out this codec. First of all, let's have a look at this H.264 codec, and then there's different bit depths and then different chroma subsampling. But very easily you can see that if you are shooting at H.264 codec, that the only thing that Premiere Pro can utilize the hardware with is the 8-bit 420 codec, and that is the same with AMD Radeon cards, Nvidia 1000 cards, 2000 series cards, 3000, Intel QuickSync, both generations of Intel QuickSync 10th or 11th series. Now, if you're shooting 8-bit 422, for example, recording the Sony a7S II externally via the HDMI port, boom, suddenly your codec is super choppy. I'm gonna show you an example in a moment, but we'll look at the rest of the codecs over here as well. So 444, 8-bit, none of it. 10-bit, none of the 10-bit codecs can be played back or utilize hardware on Premiere Pro H.264. Now, when we move to H.265, then there's a bit more options which codecs can be played back. There are two options. There are 8-bit 420 and 10-bit 420. So if you're shooting 12-bit or any of the 8-bit or 10-bit codecs that are other than 420, then you just can't play them back. And it's important to notice that none of the 12-bit codecs, can be played back over here. So if you're using one of them, make sure you use proxies. And if you do proxies in Premiere Pro, then the proxies, just go and check out, they actually go to 8-bit 420 H.264 over here. So that shows that, then they can be accelerated through the GPU. So basically, if you're shooting on your Sony a7S III camera and you want to shoot that 10-bit, footage, and you think you're flipping heck, my computer can't utilize this codec, then make sure you're shooting 10-bit 420. So if you're in the Europe or in the PAL region of the world, then this is going to be absolute nightmare for you, and you have to wait for the update from Sony. But I'm not going to go into that too much, because there isn't that many options of getting the hardware accelerated video codec out from that camera. So now I'm going to show you an example, like how does that actually work and how does it utilize your camera. So I've got two codecs over here, both of them from the Sony a7S III camera, and they're both 10-bit footage over here. This is 10-bit 422. If you don't know how to check what codec are you using here on Premiere Pro, then just right click on the footage and go to properties, or a shortcut is Ctrl-Shift-H, and then that brings that up. Or if you're in Mac, I think that is Command Shift and H, and then you can see what properties there are for your video codec. But one of the most important things is the lower down over here, which you can see that the type of codec is HEVC, which is H.265, and 10-bit. And this is 422. So if you remember what I just said, 422 isn't accelerated through GPU. So this is CPU only, or software acceleration only. Now, if we take this other sequence over here, and I'll do exactly the same thing, then as you can see, this is HEVC, which is the same H.265 codec, 10-bit, but now it's 420 instead of 422. This can be accelerated through GPU. So let me show you very quickly. So this is 422, right? And I'm just gonna start scrolling on the timeline, and you can see it's choppy, and it's not doing like a very good way of playing back this footage. And if I go to this task manager over here, can you see what my CPU just did? CPU is utilized 100%, and as you can see, the Nvidia GPU isn't utilized that much. If you're wondering why 35% is utilized, it's because I've got my OBS running over here, and it's running that, and that's why it, it's encoding this over on the GPU, and that's why it's used that much. But if we're going to go to this 10-bit 420, then suddenly look at this playback. It's much more smoother, and if we're gonna look at the task manager in a moment, because I'm gonna let it go a little bit longer, you can easily see this footage playback is so much easier. And if we go to here now, you can see, boom, look, the GPU has been utilized in the bottom over here. Boom, video decode. Poof, suddenly it can do that. But CPU, as you can see, didn't do anything. Just a little bit, but not like 100% like before. So very simply, you can see that just maybe changing some of the settings in your camera, if, you know, your project, it doesn't necessarily require a certain codec and certain chroma subsampling, then if it doesn't matter to you for maybe your online creation, or maybe you're a content creator and you need to put out video very quickly, then choosing the right codec from your camera can save you absolutely tons of time without you know, making the proxies or actually trying to edit some really hard footage, and you're like, well, why is my footage just pressing play? Come on. As you can see, it's not doing it as simply as if I go there, press play, boom, it's much faster. Now, hopefully after this video, you have a few more insights how you can accelerate your video editing in Premiere Pro. Now, if you want to know how does DaVinci Resolve compare to this, and if you're a DaVinci Resolve user, then hit that subscribe button, because videos coming out very soon. I'm very excited about that one, because there's a few more tweaks and few more quirks about DaVinci Resolve, so definitely check that out. If you did enjoy this video, hit that like button, it actually makes a difference. Subscribe if you haven't already, and my friends, I will see you in the next one. What do you think of the new audio? I'm just trying out this microphone. Let me know how does it sound. And with no further ado, bye-bye.